Love, Death, and Robots is a new collection of animated science fiction and fantasy shorts on Netflix. It was created by Deadpool director Tim Miller and produced by David Fincher, but it shows off the talents of many people who haven't really directed anything other than maybe a couple shorts and have instead worked more for animation departments in video games. In fact, many of these episodes look a lot like video game cutscenes. Now, when I say that it's all animated shorts, don't go in expecting Pixar. That's not a statement about quality, more about adult content. According to the Wikipedia page, this came from a failed reboot of Heavy Metal. Most of them have sex, nudity, gore, or any combination of the above. And those that don't will probably still be rated R for language or something. So don't watch it with your kids and or parents. It also isn't as deep as something like Black Mirror, but one thing it is good at is creating great worlds and exciting action. Now I've decided to make this in the style of what is, now my most popular video, my review of another, more hidden Netflix short anthology, Don't Watch This. In that review, I've briefly reviewed each individual short and will do the same for this series, even though Don't Watch This only had 5 episodes and this has 18. Now I'm going to discuss what these shorts are about, so if you're like me and much of the appeal of anthologies is going to each section completely blind, then you might want to click away from this video. Here's all my thoughts that you'd really need to know. I'd probably give it a strong 4 out of 5. While most of it isn't particularly thought-provoking, and a lot of stories are pretty simple, it is always interesting and visually stunning. Even the shorts that aren't so great never really fall into the category of terrible. There are many shorts that I'd actually like to see more of, like a spin-off or something. So yes, I'd recommend it. Okay, now let's get started. The first one is called Sonny's Edge. It is directed by Dave Wilson and Gabriele Pinacchioli, and based on a short story by Peter F. Hamilton. It is about a world where giant monsters are bred to fight to the death for a human's amusement. This is one of those shorts where I said I'd like to see more of. It's a very interesting world that I'd like to explore further. It's also one of those that look like a video game cutscene, which I'm not really a fan of as much as the less realistic animation. I mean, it's animated, it doesn't need to look live action. But then when the monster fight started, I was sold. It is brutal and intense and overall very fun to watch, and the episode does not lose steam after that. And the somewhat simple plot is interesting, and the ending is very satisfying. It's one of the many high points in this anthology. Next is Three Robots, directed by Victor Maldonado and Alfredo Torres, and based on a short story by John Scalzi. Unlike most of the other directors, Maldonado actually has experience with directing feature films, serving as one of the directors for the 2007 Spanish-French animated film Nocturna. It's the story of 3 robots, obviously, who take a vacation to a human city long after they went extinct. Unlike the first one, which is the serious action segment, this one is more comedic, and is very funny due to the chemistry of the title characters. Of all 3 episodes, this is the one I'd most like to see a continuation of so I could see more of these characters. This is by far the funniest of the collection, and yes, I'd say even better than Sonny's Edge. The Witness is directed by Alberto Mieglo, who is the visual consultant for Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, and artistically it looks a lot like that movie, if Mars was naked for most of it. Somebody please put that quote in an ad. Also, since I didn't get to review Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, I'll just say right here that it was one of my favorite movies of last year, and visually stunning, and The Witness is just as stunning. Anyway, it's about a stripper who witnesses a murder, and the killer is now coming after her. And there is a sci-fi twist that I won't spoil here. Even though the twist is kind of underdeveloped and there are some points where it feels like it's trying too hard to be sexual, it's still very intriguing and visually stunning. And then comes Suits, directed by Frank Balson. A group of farmers use mech suits to protect their property from a swarm of aliens. It's a balls-to-the-wall action spectacle with some suspense. It's a great adrenaline rush. That's all I really have to say about it, but it's still one of the high points action-wise. Next is Sucker of Souls, directed by Owen Sullivan, the first 2D animation in this collection. A group of archaeologists explore a tomb and accidentally unleash something evil. The story isn't the most original, and the dialogue is pretty cheesy, but that being said, I think it succeeds in what it sets out to be, a pulpy action horror short. It isn't one of the best, but it's very entertaining for what it is. When the Yoga Took Over is once again directed by Victor Maldonado and Alfredo Torres, and based on a short story by John Scalzi. The title pretty much says what this is about. Genetically modified yogurt becomes sentient and takes over the world. It does this concept with plenty of quirk. The characters are very cartoony looking, although they still don't pass up the opportunity to show nudity on them, and it runs just long enough to get the story out without having the joke of the concept getting old. And despite all the ridiculousness, there's still a sense of bleakness at the end. Beyond the Aquila Rift is directed by Dominique Boyden, Leon Burrell, Remy Kozira, and Maxime Leroux. And we're back to the lifelike video game animations. This one is about a space crew that awakens after drifting too far off course and must stay on board another woman's ship. It is a slow burn where the audience can feel that something is off, and it all leads up to a haunting ending that, unlike most of the others here, is also thought-provoking. So yes, it's a strong episode. Next up is my personal favorite, Good Hunting, directed by Oliver Thomas, the most complex story in the collection. It tells the tale of a young Chinese spirit hunter who befriends a shape-shifting fox spirit. The The story follows him into his adulthood where European colonialism has turned a rural, old-timey Asian setting into a cyberpunk future. It is a moving yet bloody love story and creates an interesting world of both sci-fi and fantasy, and does the best job of all the episodes at exploring it. Up next is The Dump, directed by Javier Vicio Gracia. An old man lives in a literal dump that is expected to be bulldozed, but the city official who is sent to convince them to move out is told that something else might be living here. The story is nothing special, and the characters aren't particularly likable, but the concept is cool, and the flashback that makes up most of the runtime is pretty tense. Shapeshifters, also directed by Sonny's Edge director Gabriel Pinacchioli, is another high point. It is about two Marines who are werewolves in a world where the existence of werewolves is well known and feared. The first two-thirds resemble a wartime drama set in Afghanistan, and it all culminates in a werewolf fight that is even more brutal than the monster fight in Sonny's Edge. It does a good job of exploring its themes of discrimination, has an amazing fight scene, and is even very emotional. Next up is Helping Hand, directed by John Yeo. It is very much like the movie Gravity with a female astronaut drifting helplessly through space, but this takes a turn that is very disturbing and hard to watch while also delivering an uplifting message about the human spirit. Another high point for the series. Then comes Fish Night, directed by Damien Nenau, who also directed last year's animated film Another Day of Life. It is also based on a short story by Joe R. Lansdale. This has some truly great visuals. The story is bizarre and simplistic, but I can see it being the kind of story that gets analyzed for different meanings. From what I've seen, it's pretty divisive, but I kind of enjoyed it. Lucky 13 is directed by Jerome Chen and based on a short story by Mark Recluse. It is about a rookie space soldier pilot who is given a ship that is considered by many to be cursed. This is an always interesting sci-fi war story. It has great battles and even a bit of the feels. And then comes Zima Blue, directed by Robert Valley, who worked as a director for episodes of Aeon Flux, Tron Uprising, and Wonder Woman. It is based on a short story by Alastair Reynolds about an artist whose art goes to extreme lengths to show mankind's purpose. Remember when I said that everything in this collection would be rated R? This one might be the exception if I remember correctly. In fact, it might not even be a PG-13. Despite this, it is still one of the most involving, thought-provoking, and, well, adult episodes. It has what I think is the best art style in the entire season. This is a very close second to my favorite episode, proving that you don't necessarily have to be edgy to make great art. And then there's Blind Spot, directed by Vitaly Shishko, essentially a Saturday morning cartoon with blood and F-bombs sprinkled in. This short does a great job of recreating that sense of childishness and action. It's not the deepest thing you'll ever see, but it's good for nostalgic fun. The next one, directed by creator Tim Miller himself, is called Ice Age. This one also stands out because, well, it's actually mostly live action, but with elements of animation that could probably just be considered standard CGI special effects. It is about a live-action couple who are played by Mary Elizabeth Winstead and Topher Grace who discover a rapidly evolving civilization in their freezer. It's an interesting concept and has great visuals, but other than that, it's nothing special. It's an okay episode. And now for what I consider to be my least favorite, although it's not completely awful. Next up is Alternate Histories, directed once again by Victor Maldonado and Alfredo Torres. It describes what the world would be like if Hitler had died before he came into power. It tells of 6 scenarios of him dying in increasingly ridiculous ways on the same day coming out of art school, and showing the increasingly ridiculous ways that the world would be affected by each scenario. It is an interesting concept. I'd even go so far as to say that I'd like to see more concepts like this in the upcoming seasons. Unfortunately, it's too cartoonish for its own good, and isn't as funny as it wants to be. That being said, it still has some good stupid humor, and I can see many others really liking it, but for me it was the worst one. And our final episode is The Secret War by director Istvan Zarkozy. It is about Red Army soldiers who are sent to destroy an army of demons deep in the forests of Siberia. While it doesn't rise to the rank of the best in the collection, it has epic battles and an interesting plot. It is an above-average horror action short. In conclusion, Love, Death and Robots is a great watch for sci-fi and animation fans. Even though it's not perfect, it's great entertainment, and even its misses aren't as bad as the average episode of Don't Watch This.